My current wife, I remember I had this OBE when I was, 20, and I had already seen her. But at that moment, I knew that was going to be an important person in my life. We started the interaction, we started dating, we started going out. And maybe about 4 or 5 months later is that I realized, wait a second, I think I had had an OBE with this person. And I had to go back and take a look at my notes and see the description. That's right. That's right. It is her. Hello, everyone. I am Luis Minero, and I am here on Your Superior Self.
Lewis,
Happy to
my
join you.
man. Oh man, I'm so happy you're here, dude. I have been looking a lot at your content and following you and watching YouTube. I have like your voice in my ear right now as we're talking. But thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm very curious. I'm gonna come at you really quickly with the fastball here.
All
How do
right.
you perceive reality?
How do I perceive reality? I guess you're referring to the physical reality because there are
Yes.
different ways, I guess, of perceiving. But no, yeah, I think generally speaking, first of all, starting with the physical senses, I perceive that just like everybody else. Naturally, of course, as you start to get into, developing your paranormal phenomena, out of body experiences, or, becoming even more sensitive, many people who are psychic, will probably tell you the same thing. You start to perceive or to be able to read a little bit more during the day or, in different situations about what is happening. So the energetic information or the vibes, as people like to put it, right?
Hmm.
And you pick up those types of things, from time to time, moments in which it's a little bit more, how could I say, crucial or maybe relevant, or maybe something more personal of a more delicate nature is happening there. And then you end up picking up, things that maybe the person is thinking or reacting, or, a relative, a friend, etc. So that happens quite a bit. But obviously, with the paranormal phenomena, you also get sort of like the backstage perspective, of certain things as well.
Sure. So are you able to connect with other people's higher self or being at that level?
So uh, when I am inside the body, sorry, or you're already
Yeah,
talking,
like right now, like just I've had a lot of conversations with just to give you some context with Tom Campbell and some out of body experiencers, and they feel like I guess when they evolve as consciousness, when they're in this reality, they have more psychic abilities and able, like to your point, perceive different
right?
energies from people. And I'm just curious to whether or not you have had similar experiences where you are able to feel or tap into someone's being, whether that's they define it as their higher self or level of consciousness.
Yes, yes, indeed. In certain opportunities, you're able to tap into that. And sometimes it's not just their higher being, but sometimes it might be, for example, what people like to refer to as their spirit guide as well. Like, like in many instances, it forms inside your head, or you even hear, but it almost sounds as if you're hearing the voice of somebody saying, tell him or ask him about X, Y, and Z, for example. And then, of course, if you obviously we all have our free will, so if you consider that is something that sounds positive, correct, constructive, then maybe you ask them or you mention it. So yeah, I don't want to give the impression that this is happening all the time, 24 hours a day, but yes, absolutely, that does occur.
That's awesome. So this all started for you when you were a young boy, right? Like, was it 5 years old you were having out of body experiences?
Yeah, I was about 12 or so, more or less, and I started having them, out of the blue. I was actually on that first opportunity was more of sort of like an intellectual mental activity that I was engaged in. And probably that is what had made me recover my awareness, as I was taking a nap in the middle of the day. And that's how they started. At first, that first time I didn't know that there was an entire field of study of this. So it sort of like surprised me a little bit. Surprises the correct word. I wasn't scared. I was just surprised, like this is different,
Yeah.
that type of a reaction.
Well, 12 years old is a rough time for a young boy. And then you're having out of body experiences, right? Like you're already your body's changing and developing and you're entering your teenage years and awkward stages, as I call it, acne and like, you're just getting into finding out about girls and you're just finding out who you trying to find out who you are, and then you have an out of body experience. So like, can you hit on that a little bit more? Like what was your, I guess, perception of this newer reality? I mean, any new insight on like to what we're experiencing here?
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, you're right. It is quite a transitional age and everything. I think that for me at that time, especially those first OBEs, they seemed to me like some other type of dreams. I knew that it wasn't a dream. I knew that it was a different type of an experience. But boys also at that time, they're into, playing sports. And as you're saying, trying to see if I'm still, afraid of talking to the girl or doing this. So you have so many interests and so many things going on that was just something else that was happening in the background, like a certain type of dream. And now of course we analyze it and we realize, oh, that must have been very meaningful. But at that moment, it was just something that happened in the middle of the night, and I honestly didn't really realize what was the significance of it. It probably started to hit me more like when I was maybe 16 or 18, and I was already starting to read, for example, a little bit of philosophy. And I remember connecting a little bit with, wait a second, but I have been outside the body, or I have been seeing myself from an OBE perspective. So what does this mean? How does this fit with this that this guy is saying here? So at that moment, really, it was just I wasn't able really to take advantage of it at that moment, honestly. And also, by the way, the OBEs that I had at that moment, they were extremely simple. I was just floating in my bedroom above my bed. And then I remember floating in the hallway of the house, a couple of times seeing the dog walk by, going and to his water dish, slurping a little bit of water. So it was, they were just simply simple. But my mentality, more than anything that hadn't matured, was the thing that didn't allow me to take too much advantage of them, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. I know it is so fascinating, this type of experience where you are experiencing yourself outside of your body and you're witnessing your what you think you are sleeping, right?
Yes.
What does that do for you? Like, do you have questions? Like, what, did it ever, it sparked this curiosity of like, who am I? Who is the I?
Right, right. And certainly, it startled me. I remember I came into the body, that first time, for example, when I saw my body lying in bed. And I remember that I was thinking, again, I was 12, 13, and I was thinking, I was there, but I was here, but I was there, but I was here. And honestly, it wasn't clear to me, what was going on. But again, now thinking back, I probably just simply thought about it like, oh, just another weird dream. And, probably somebody told me to go play baseball. And that was the end of that, deep thought at that moment. But yeah, later on, I started I think that probably the out of body experience were some of the things that helped me to get out, I don't know, but at least to modify my concept, for example, of religion and what is life, because I grew up in a very religious, I had a very religious upbringing. So the first communion and everything, and I think that already when I was maybe 13 or so, in my mind, maybe you're gonna laugh at this. I remember that I had already decided, okay, I am no longer Catholic. That's it. It's my decision, but I'm not gonna tell my parents because these people pay the bills still. So I don't wanna, rock the boat a little bit. But I remember having this conversation very clearly. And I think that part of it had to do with the out of body experiences as well, aside from the logical part that some of the, very strict specific things, I guess I had questions about, but also more than likely the fact that I realized, okay, there's more going on than what this book is actually covering. Let's put it this way. So yeah, I think that at that age it helped me to develop my idea of what is going on a little bit faster.
Well, I laugh, but it is a truth in this reality that even scientists who may believe in this don't really tell anybody, right? Because certain
That's
institutes
right.
pay the bills, right? So they can't
That's
really
right.
say what they believe or else they'll get defunded. So at a young age, you realize that, and you kind of just said, yeah, I'm Catholic, but I'm experiencing a whole totally different reality to what I'm experiencing here. Did your belief systems related to Catholicism affect your out of body states or non-physical states?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Because for me, Catholicism, especially at that age, was more about the rituals, I guess, about specifically more going to church and, yeah, going through all of the ritual activities. I remember that my first communion was a big thing, in my family, and even, afterwards the confirmation is what it's called. Yes, the confirmation. I remember I was probably already 15, and I remember thinking this is probably the last ritual that I participate in because after that I'm going to be on my own. But I was already decided that this is this it, that specific track in that specific way in which it was presented to me, it wasn't for me. So
Well, what about out of body states deconstructed your belief systems in Catholicism?
yeah, that probably happened a little bit more afterwards. When I was already like in my late teens, that I started to realize, wait a second, some of the things that, first of all, the idea of, some of the things that you're able to see outside the body or to do outside the body is what in religion they call miracles, for example. Some of these paranormal phenomena to be able to move fast between one place and another, to be able to go through walls or, to be able to shift sort of like realities or things like that, you know, um, that I realized, look, I can see how in the past, maybe somebody had an out of body experience, came back, mentioned it, told it there to his or her colleague, and this was taken as as a miracle and the foundation of a specific ideology or philosophy. That certainly I remember you know having very clear to me, hey, this is and obviously at that time also I had no idea how to produce the out of body experience. It was just something that would happen naturally, normally. But I did have another classmate of mine who had them when I was 17, 18. I do remember this conversation. But for him, they would scare him quite a bit. He would wake up in the middle of the night, sometimes scratching, at the air or, sort of like screaming a little bit. And his brother, who actually was also a classmate of ours, so, we were all in the same grade, he would also confirm that, yeah, he woke up and he was doing this and he was, saying that. For him, they were scary. And I remember one of the first conversations we had in the, sort of like the lunchroom there at our school. I was mentioning, no, for me, they were always very normal, very natural. I never, I just simply didn't feel, afraid at all. But for him, they were. And I also remember, by the way, that we got into this conversation about out of body experience at 17 or so that we were. And we were talking there maybe for about 15, 20 minutes about different things that we were perceiving. And then when the three of us sort of like look up, the rest of our grade was looking at us like, what are you guys talking about? What is this? And I remember my reaction was like, this doesn't happen to you guys. This is not, common. Because
Yeah,
honestly, I had no reference. That was the first time that I had a reference of like, oh no, it's only happening to certain people.
sure.
Um, yeah, yeah,
I
that
I
was
have so many
the
questions of that, right? So you talked about
yeah.
you thought it was a dream when you were younger, when you were experiencing these out of bodies. Did they ever crystallize into more visual experiences, like visceral, like right now, how I'm speaking to you? Like I feel like this reality is very crisp, and I'm experiencing it with my five senses. But as you, I guess, age, did you have more visceral experiences and more? I guess I don't want to say physical, but like, did it ever crystallize to what we experience here?
Yeah, more realistic experiences of sorts. Yeah, and I actually knew that they were different than a dream, but I really didn't have a word. So that the word that I would use was dream. I actually, the actual translation, because Spanish is my first language, so the actual translation would be, I had a cool dream. Pretty much was my expression. And even sometimes when I was 16, I remember thinking, how can I have that cool dream again? But I really didn't know how to. So I knew that there was a difference between the regular dreams that we all have, I guess, and these cool dreams, for lack of a better expression. And yes, they were much more realistic. They were much more, well, I was conscious in them. I was much more aware, exactly as you are saying, the way we are right now, that we know that we are, conscious and aware of this experience, right? So that's what would happen.
Mm. How many dimensions do you think there are? Like, how many planes of existence?
Yeah, difficult to say. I wouldn't venture a guess. Hundreds, thousands. I really don't know. Even because there are some that so it seems like different planes of consciousness, more correctly, like levels of consciousness to a certain extent. And I don't know. I don't know if any OBE would say, I have visited them all. It's just you're always surprised by different layers and different realities that you find. And another thing is, and maybe other people might have mentioned this already, but another thing is that many of those dimensions, they seem to be more like a consensus created by the consensus of different people who think alike. And then if it is specifically created because of that, if that is how they originated, then it means that more can keep on originating as our ideas as a society evolve or a certain group evolve a certain idea, they can create a new dimension and a new reality. And yeah, so that in terms of trying to answer the number would be,
It'd be
it just wouldn't
pointless,
fit.
right? Like, yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
it's highly probable that there are many, many, many that we do not are aware of, right? Did you
Right.
experience yourself or the you there experiencing multiple dimensions at once?
In some rare opportunities, yes. So for example, many times you're outside the body, and just like right now, you're focused on one reality and you're interacting with one reality and only seeing one reality. But on some opportunities, your level of awareness is a little bit more expanded. And then it seems that the adjacent dimension starts to bleed through, sort of. And then you start to see maybe two or three, the one immediately above and below. You see how here language, it's not above or below, but
Sure.
it's what we have, right? So you start to be able to perceive a little bit more the ones that are a little bit closer. And even though you're still focused on one and interacting on one, you can already see part of it. To a
Mhm.
certain extent, by the way, this is not that dissimilar from what we were discussing at the beginning of, sometimes somebody who has a little bit of psychism and it's talking to you, but at the same time is feeling a little bit, the higher consciousness of the person or the spirit guide of the person. And, it's already a little bit in contact with the second dimension at the same time.
Sure. So when you experienced yourself or had a higher awareness of other dimensions that you are currently residing in, do they all have a purpose? Like, do you have a sense of purpose in those dimensions? Like right now, I think a lot of people resonate with, why are we here? Do I have a purpose? This is my purpose, and I'm pursuing
Right.
this. Do you have that sense of feeling in other dimensions?
Not in all of them. There are some dimensions in which people, and I would say a little bit similar to the physical reality, in which people seem to be going a little bit through the motions and not really understanding why. So because to a certain extent the dimensions are, we could say that they are, levels of consciousness. The more consciousness or the more awareness the individual has, the more a sense of purpose it manifests, and the more a sense of purpose you feel in the dimension. I say you feel because when you arrive and you have this interaction with like the energy field of the dimension, this is something that you already feel like in the energetic information of the dimension. This one is more organized. This one is more aware. This one has a more sense of purpose, but others seem to be more like a little noisy, almost like yeah, like random things happening and people don't really understanding why they are doing things, or and many times without too much of a purpose. Just going about their businesses, repeating maybe things that they have been used to or conditioned to, from other experiences.
Hmm. Have you experienced higher levels? And I say higher, and people are automatically going to think better. But the more organized existences and dimensions that you experienced, do beings or ascended masters reside in those levels of consciousness?
Yes, beings that are more evolved, and then exactly, we have had or we have created, right, all of these expressions to refer to them. So, yeah, ascended masters, spirit guides, beings of light, angels, etc. So, certainly individuals, that have a greater awareness, and one of the things that seems to, be common to most of them, if not all, is precisely the idea that they want to help, the ones that have a lower level of development with their development, with their evolution, with their spiritual evolution.
Why is that though? Why is this ultimate like feeling of help? Like, is it just once you get to a certain level of consciousness, like you just want, it's like Plato's allegory of the cave, right? Like once you hit a certain level of awareness of what true reality is, like you feel bad for the guys locked back in the cave staring at the puppets. Like, is that why? Like they just feel this huge empathy for what we're going through, the suffering, maybe?
Yeah, I think that that's a big part of it. It's empathy, it's ethics, it's probably the idea that you realize, look, if I have the ability to make the life of the person a little bit better, why would I let it go, right? So, and for them, probably who are much more sensitive, sometimes you get inklings of this. It probably looks a little bit like for us, like when we are walking past a pool and all of a sudden a kid is drowning. And I'm a fairly good swimming. I can get in and get him and catch him, right? So you start to become uh, first of all more sensitive to other things, but also less indifferent, to what's happening with other individuals. So, and by the way, that also shows how they are in a level of development, of evolution, right? That is a little bit higher. Something that obviously we are all trying to develop and struggling with. And, I would say most people try to do the best they can. It's just that obviously, we still have some things to develop.
Well, is that empathy related to the fact that they've been where we're at? Like as a father, I have three kids and I see a kid drowning in a pool. I'm like, I'm saving this kid, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm a father, right? Do they have the same feeling of like, I see these people drowning. I've been there. I need to help them.
Yeah, that seems to be the case, at least with a few that I have interacted with. It seems that they have, had lives at the level that we are at this moment, and now they're just simply at a different level. And then more than likely, that's where their empathy comes, because they know, how hard it was. And this is part of the sensitivity and the awareness that they develop, right? They are able to see better or very well, the struggle of the human being in life, right? In whichever level we happen to be, we're all struggling with something, with trying to overcome this, with trying to become better at this. We have the hope of, if I could just simply be in this other little state a little bit more above, I would be fine. And also the evolutionary ambition of all of us. Once we get to that stage, now we're struggling with the next stage and with the next stage, which is okay. This is part of the, I don't know, the richness, the interesting part of evolution in this school day to a certain extent.
Sure. So you said something interesting earlier. You said ethical, like they ethically come back, right? Who created those ethics, right? Who decides what's good and bad on the other side?
Yeah, good, very good question, very good question. And I don't have a specific answer. I think, my best understanding of that is that it just simply happens naturally based on the experience of the person. Meaning, It's not like somebody's telling you, hey, the kid is drowning, you should jump in the pool. But it's just that you yourself, as you mature and develop, you yourself, something inside of you, springs out and says, look, I should jump in and save the kid, and because I can, because it would be the right thing to do. But nobody really, that I know of, I haven't seen anybody really that is dictating that, or setting it up in a stone tablet for everybody to follow.
Well, have you, I guess this question is like over time, right? Related, like over time, over your first OBE to your latest one. How have they changed? Like how have they grown? Like do they, philosophically challenge you? Like how does it change you as an individual?
Yeah, I think that nowadays they're not so much exploratory, talking about the OBE per se. They're not as much exploratory, like, how does it feel to go through a glass window, or, will I be able to make it to this dimension? But they are more sort of like, again, with a sense of purpose. If many times it is more about, okay, this is happening. Well, I leave the body, and sometimes, one of the spirit guides or individuals that you start to know, outside the body, because that is a whole different topic that many times is not talked about as much. Is that naturally, wherever you go, you start to make acquaintances, right? If you start a new job, you start to make acquaintances, you meet people in the break room, et cetera, et cetera. But if you start having out of body experiences, you also start to make acquaintances, and you start to know people in that reality, and that you basically only see them in that reality. So, and here I'm referring to some individuals that have more or less, I would say, the level of awareness similar to mine, but they don't have a physical body at this moment, and others that have a level of awareness that are greater. And then many times I leave the body, and there is already sort of like a consensus of the group, or sometimes one of them, look, there is this happening here with this person. Let's try to go and see if we can help this individual in X, or this person on Y, or today, let's try to do, this other type of an activity. So there is already much more of a sense of person, a sense of purpose, and a sense of, I am using it. I am, yeah, I am actually trying to put it in practice, right, for a specific task. So in that I would say is probably the biggest difference. They're not as exploratory anymore.
Sure. What do your spirits guides look like? I'm just curious.
Yeah, most of the times you just hear them and you feel them. It's more of an intuition. I have seen them a few times, especially a couple of them. One of them looks like this older bull man, just
Wayne
no hair,
Dyer.
no hair. I'm now having a hard time picturing Wayne Dyer, but but older, maybe 85 or so, with glasses, sort of like whitish or rimless glasses, so to speak. That always catches my attention. My wife is the one that selects my rims, and then I'm always paying attention, to those little details in terms of the glasses. But he is probably the one that I have more communication with. There is another one that I feel more often than not, and this is also something interesting to mention about the OBEs. Here in the physical reality, we depend, or we base our experiences so much on vision. And so things are very visual. We are very visual, and it is a very good sense that we rely on, but when you leave the body, certainly you have vision, but the intuition, the perception of the energies, you start to get a lot of information just simply from the perception of the energies. And many times things that people are thinking, or uh, again, you're able to read the information in the energetic environment, and you're able to feel other individuals, even though you're not able to see them. And then when you feel them, you feel their specific pattern of energies, and you know that it's them. Almost like if right now, we were to close our eyes, but a very close friend of ours, or our wife, were to talk to us, we know her voice. So even though we're not seeing her, we know it's her that is talking to us, right? So it's pretty much the same thing, trying to make an analogy. It's just that the senses are much richer outside the body. They don't, I guess here inside the body, we are more limited to the classic five senses, so to speak.
Who's the highest being or ascended master that you've interacted with, and what was that energy like?
Um, yeah, hard to classify them at that level. Sometimes, and maybe you might have heard me say this on other interviews. I feel, talking about life and trying to give up, since you're asking me about the highest, I sometimes feel that we are in a school day, and I say a life is it's like a school day. And then at the end of the school day, just like the kid that doesn't stay in school, we go back to our home, to our house, we do our homework for the next school day. And through successive school days, we go on developing and evolving. So some tasks that we're going to develop and that we're going to grow as a person, as a being, take many school days, just simply because they're more complex. They have much more layers to it. But for the kid that is in fourth grade, trying to evaluate whether somebody is in, a senior in high school or a junior in high school becomes very hard, or even a senior in high school still, not even in college, it becomes very hard. So it's hard to say. Um, but what I would say is that what I'm able to see is the level, first of all, of how could I say, of awareness, of sensitivity that they have for the things of others. So just like I was giving the example of, we walk past a pool and the kid is drowning there. It seems that they are not only are they aware that that is happening at this moment, but they are aware that that is happening with hundreds of people at the same time. So they are almost like being able to affect or jump into 100 pools at the same time and contribute a little bit with their energies and their manifestation at the same time.
Hmm.
So their manifestation also is no longer limited to just that moment, but it just simply gives the, to the name multidimensional, it gives it a completely different layer. It's no longer just perceiving maybe two, three dimensions. It's almost as if they are acting in many at the same time. And when you connect a little bit with their energies, you have an inkling of that. And sometimes that surprises you quite a bit when you start to feel that pattern of energies and you realize there's a lot of information here. I don't know if I can follow all the threads, so to speak. But you get a small inkling. You also get the impression you're getting maybe a sliver of a 0.01% of what they're actually into. And in their mind, they're perceiving a lot more. Um, yeah. So so
It's so
hard to say
fascinating. Yeah.
specifically. Yeah.
Well, yeah, right. I can totally resonate with that analogy, right? And like a junior, senior in high school, as a fourth grader, how do you determine what that level is? But their messages, are they the same, right? Or do they give you different context of to why we're here in fourth grade and why some study harder than others and why there seems to be a lot of chaos, right?
Right. Yes, indeed. And I think they, or at least the individuals that I have interacted with, they usually are not so much about giving you direct messages, so to speak, like, like you should do this or, this is what's happening. But it's more about, sort of like there is this inherent freedom that they give you, like allowing you to discover the process and you grow through the process of discovery to a certain extent. And I think that that is part of what throws us off a little bit here in the physical dimension, right? Maybe even because of our, at least certainly in my case, maybe even because of my religious upbringing, we get used to there being some authority or somebody that's telling you this is the right path or this is what you should do, right? And then we have this sort of like conditioning in our mind. And what I experience certainly is the opposite. It's more like what do you think, is the best thing here to do? And to a certain extent, for them, many times, it's like, it's okay if you make a mistake. Just learn with that mistake and try to make a different mistake next time. And then little by little, we go on, figuring it out to a certain extent. Um, but if you follow, or one of the things that at least I try to pay attention is to their example, right? So they maybe there isn't anything explicit that is coming down, but you see what they are engaged to, and then the activities in which they're engaged is normally again assisting, helping, trying to, and certainly helping many times with physical things, with things that we would consider a little bit more, tangible, um, but the main thing that they try to concern themselves with is with trying to help with ideas so that the person hopefully understands a new way of doing things that will be better for him and for her. Sorry, for him or her and for everybody as the person puts it in practice, right?
Hmm.
So more like giving the lesson, so to speak, but in a very exemplary fashion, in a very, this is what I am doing type of a
Sure.
thing.
Well, to that point, what I am doing, many people here do not feel like their efforts are being felt, right? Like they feel like, why should I try this? It doesn't matter, right? Like this
Right,
feeling of like doom and gloom. How
right.
how does our actions here, our decisions affect affect consciousness as a whole?
Yeah, as a whole, in the collective, right? So at the individual level, it affects certainly us and certainly the people that are close to us. It'll affect us. So this, as we think, as we manifest, as we, consider this person or another, we are manifesting these fields of energy with with that intention. Whether it's a more positive intention or a more negative intention, and the person then is also receiving it. This is why sometimes, if we've been thinking about our friend that we're going to meet later, this guy hasn't paid me my $20 and I want my $20 and I cannot believe he did this. When we meet him, many times it's not a surprise that the person is already in the defensive because we have basically been sending these energies, that were not the most positive, And this happens to all of us. I think that these are sometimes some of the hardest things, to control, to try to be correct or ethical, not just with our actions, but with our thoughts, with what we are thinking, towards others and towards situations and people. And the reason why this becomes so relevant is because when you're outside the body, your thoughts are your actions. So the moment that you think, very positively about somebody, you basically see a field of energy flowing from you and, sort of like embracing the person. And the opposite, if your intention is the opposite, right? So this becomes even, again, talking about vision, this becomes even somewhat visual outside the body, that you see these fields of energy, gravitating in one direction and another.
Hmm.
So at the individual level, getting back to the original question, we affect with our decisions, with our thoughts, the people that are close by. But collectively, we make obviously a bigger impact. So if a society is more looking to, progress, to take care of its citizens, to try to educate people, then of course that's the type of energy that reverberates throughout the society. And of course, the opposite if the intention is the opposite.
Sure. I love what you said about like thoughts are things, right? In this reality, there's a lot of physicalists out there that believe that this material world is the true reality, right? And I'm curious to like
Right,
what after your experiences, like you were kind of to your point earlier about Catholicism, like I don't believe in that anymore, right? But I'm just going to let them, believe that I believe, so that way I can eat and have a place to sleep and have somebody do my laundry, right?
right.
What pulled you towards chemistry and science?
Actually, I was always into science. Maybe at the beginning, when I was again a kid, I didn't see that there was any conflict between the two. They were just two areas that seemed interesting to me. And then afterwards, obviously, when I saw that the specific religion that I had been presented had some problems in logic, let's put it this way, I, stayed just simply with science, and I studied chemistry specifically because I wanted to be a doctor. But afterwards, I just simply stayed, with chemistry. So the idea of being a little bit more, trying to look for evidence, trying to corroborate things, trying to see if this is happening, trying to understand also how other systems work. This I like quite a bit about chemistry, the fact that it almost seems like you get involved into a puzzle with very different pieces, that are not a standard, right? It's not the letters, it's not the numbers, but these pieces that seem to have their own rules, and they do. So I like science quite a bit, always since the beginning. Now, once I graduated from college and did a little bit of research in the university, I left chemistry behind. I wish I would have had more time to stay within the science or the more specific, rigid science field. So I have had other professions. Since I speak a few languages as a simultaneous interpreter, in conferences when somebody's talking in one language, the one in the booth, saying it in another language, that's me. I worked, for many years doing that. And now as a software developer, as a software engineer as well. So yeah.
Mm, that's so fascinating. When you were out of body, have you ever experienced any civilizations that had more advanced chemistry models than us?
Yeah, for sure. I didn't get so much into the chemistry because it's no longer it doesn't seem to be anymore, based on the physical chemistry or matter, so to speak. But certainly, the energies and their environments to a certain extent work differently. They have just simply a different mechanism for sure, but also a different way of functioning. So in different dimensions, you see different levels of objects. And this also seems to be more related to what the humans or what the beings at that level still think that they need. So in this reality, for example, we have created language, we have created writing, and because writing is so important to us, then in order for us to see it, if our eyesight is not that good, we have created glasses, and then we have all of these objects. But outside the body, the moment that there is a different type of language, sometimes you no longer need the glasses. So when you are outside the body, in essence, nobody should need glasses, but you leave the body, or for example, if us both we were to leave the body and you were to look at me, you're going to see that my double or my astral body, I'm trying to use here the most generic terms, the astral body that when you see my astral body, you're going to see that my astral body has glasses. And it's not that I need a lens to help me correct the light outside the body, but it's just simply my conditioning. It's the habit, my self-image, the way I think I look. That's basically it. So just like I'm transferring that habit and that conditioning outside the body because I think I look with glasses, the same thing happens with all of us. We transfer many of our habits and conditionings outside the body. And then you end up in dimensions that have a ground and structures that look like buildings. And also in some dimensions, you see objects that are basically the equivalent of a car or of a flying object, sort of like a helicopter. But the way they work is different because there isn't like a propeller, spinning or a turbine. You don't have to put oil in them or gasoline, So,
They sound like
so you
anti-gravity vehicles to me,
to a certain extent, yeah,
or a
or that,
UFO.
or that's a way in which you could describe it, indeed, because even gravity. By the way, that's another interesting topic. There are so many things here. In many dimensions, there is ground, and everybody is sort of like leaning on the ground to advance. The same thing we do here. On other dimensions, there is ground, but people are already flying the way the astral body or the second body can fly. We can fly when we are outside the body. It's just that the conditioning at some level, because they're more conditioned to the physical reality, they just simply walk.
Hmm.
On others, they fly. On others, they fly so much and they have gotten used so much to the flying that the reality of ground is no longer present in that dimension, simply because they never, this is already something that they left behind so far ago that they just simply never created the reality of ground. And then in that dimension, it looks almost as if you're in the middle of the sky or of a cloud, so to speak. You're just simply seeing fields of energy. And because there is no longer gravity and a ground, there is no concept of up and down. So you are standing, let's say talking to somebody like this, and somebody comes and talks to you, at a 90-degree angle, and maybe the heads are relatively close, but the feet are dangling all over because nobody's falling, nobody's really even concerned with that at all.
Wow. So, there's so many questions that I have. Is the non-physical true reality?
True. I would say that they're all true, in the sense that they all, yeah, they all exist. They are all there, and furthermore, I would say they all exist whether we are there to verify them or not.
Really? So the observer
I
effect, it doesn't include those realities?
No, I'm saying we are certainly observing them, but what I'm saying is, again, one thing is the observer effect of one person, but another thing is there is also the collective observer effect, and then the collective observer effect has already taken certain decisions and has already created a certain line of uh, existence or happenings or events. So
Well, let me
uh,
ask you this.
go ahead.
Is there one omnipresent observer?
Not that I know of. I would say there are, talking about the most advanced beings, there are many beings that seem to have their energies permeating a lot of different dimensions. So I wouldn't say there is one. I would say there are several. And now, what is above them? I don't know. There must be something above them. Now, going into the realm of speculation, simply because you keep on developing, you keep on evolving. So even those, maybe some evolve a little bit faster than the others, and maybe one is at the top of the line and one is a little bit below. What happens is that you get into a little bit the problem that I was mentioning before. From our fourth grade perspective or fifth grade, and by the way, I don't want to put anybody down by saying fourth grade or third grade. It's just an analogy to make sense of things. But from my uh, perspective, limited, advanced maybe on some aspects and limited on others, I am not able to tell anymore. They are just way, way out there. And this is where I go to these examples of, we are like the kid that is on sixth grade or has 6 years old and is looking at his, brother who is a PhD in math, writing math, on the notebook. And this is full of sigma and, the limit of, and the kid doesn't understand absolutely anything and doesn't know if what the brother is writing is correct, is a proper proof, or is just gibberish. Honestly, he just simply could be doodling and the kid wouldn't know. So it's really more an issue of we or I. Let me put it this way: I don't want to put everybody in this bag. I just simply don't have the way of evaluating that.
Mm,
If there is one at the top, I wouldn't know.
yeah, I mean, that's fair, right? I mean, I think when you call this a fourth grade, right? And I'm sure there's some tutors out there that can help us, the slower guys out a little bit.
A- Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's what it boils down to. You're not able to see, the Einstein. Let me try to at least put it a little bit more objective. You're not able to understand the Einstein there. But what you do realize is, okay, but I am in fourth grade and I have my multiplication tables here to learn. So the only way that I'm going to understand the Einstein is if I at this moment focus on my multiplication tables and then on my next lesson and then on my next lesson, and eventually I'll get to Einstein and I'll realize, his proof was correct or not, whatever happens to be the case, right? But at this moment, this teacher who is not Einstein is helping me with my multiplication table. So let me focus on what I am doing here. And that probably is another thing that happens a little bit as you start to have more out of body experience. You start to leave the speculations behind and you start to focus more on, okay, there is this task at hand. Let me get on with it. Let me try to contribute in this fashion, and this is what corresponds to me at this moment. And also at the same time, there is less anxiety from that because you get this. like a perspective of many lives. Just like the kid in school, right? At this moment when we think, okay, the kid in school is going to study for this entire week the multiplication table of eight. There is no anxiety for us for them to spend 5 days, um, repeating, eight times one, eight times two, and times three sounds, irrelevant, but we know that it's going to help them in somehow, eventually, because we have this perspective that is broader. But when we are inside life, you know, already one life seems like something so big, and it is, you know, because we are at this moment trying to think with the physical brain, this one life is sometimes a little bit overwhelming. I'll agree to that. Certainly, from this perspective, it's a little bit harder. Um, and this is why I think the out of body experiences or having this perspective is so useful, because then you start to realize, okay, I'm going to spend the next 3 lives doing this. No problem. I don't need to have any anxiety. I already spent 10 lives learning not to kill. Good thing that I got it. Now I don't do it.
Well, to that point of reincarnation, right? As you evolve, which I'm assuming is the quality of your choices, right?
Yeah.
And how you pursue that purpose or your purpose in this life. Do we ever de-evolve? Like, so if I, let's say I don't become the fully ideal person that I wanted to be in this life,
Right.
when I start back up in the next reincarnation, will I still have the feeling of, I need to evolve as consciousness, or will I de-evolve and just fall back into old patterns? If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And so the I would say the progression and the evolution is not completely linear, like this, but it's more like this, because you are trying something out, you are developing something, but you don't know specifically if that is the right track or not. So you explore a few other avenues, which maybe one of them is not as positive. You realize it doesn't help you, it doesn't help the other person. So then you correct a little bit and you go on correcting and exploring and improving, and your journey goes on ascending, but not linearly, but more
Hmm.
in a, you know, up and down type of
Curvilinear, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Um, Is there an ideal person? Like, is there a human being here that you can say that you've met or experienced or heard about that is the fully ideal person or individual or fully realized individual or human consciousness?
Yeah, not that I know of. No, I would say I appreciate and I see, many skills from many people that I wish I had at this moment, and that I'm sure I'm going to spend some time and some lives again struggling to develop, but not one that gathers them all, so to speak, or not one that I know of. Let's put it this way, because obviously, there might be.
Sure. Have you witnessed anyone with extra sensory, like superhuman skills of like, manifestation, being able to manifest things instantly into this reality?
I haven't. I have only read of individuals that have done this. Reading the literature of paranormal phenomena and everything. You read about those individuals. I don't doubt necessarily that those skills exist. It makes all the sense to me. Even seeing how you can again manipulate these fields of energies outside the body and even inside the body, you can learn to send a field of energies, and you feel it so clearly and absorb, and sort of like the now the name is gonna escape me. Sort of like Reiki. That's what I want to say. Yes, sort of like Reiki. Those practitioners and those individuals that do Reiki, with a little bit of practice, they feel that this substance flowing through their body, and being being exteriorized or going out through their hands and into different areas of the body of the other person. But that skill just simply keeps on growing and growing and growing. So if, even for Reiki practitioners that might hear us at this moment, if you think you're good at this moment with 5 years, you'll see how good you'll be with 5 lives of doing that. And then with 50 lives, the amount of energy that you can process at one time just simply keeps on increasing, increasing. And then the dimensional barriers start to oppose less of a barrier, less of an obstacle to the person. So you can, grab a lot of energies from the environment or from one dimension and, materialize. So it makes all the sense to me that those skills are possible.
Well, how do you know what you've done in the past lives, right? Is it through out of body experiences? Is that how you know what you've been in the past?
In my specific case, yes, I have recollections of some of my past life, but it doesn't have to be only through out of body experiences. Some people have them even, inside the body, right? Sometimes the thing that triggers an out of body experience is a physical experience. You go to a specific city, especially places like Europe or Asia that have a longer history, right? You arrive for the first time, in Tokyo, and you're interacting with a specific very quaint temple, maybe more in Kyoto than Tokyo, but you're in Kyoto interacting with a very quaint temple, and all of a sudden, you have this flash of insight, and you have a recollection of a specific, life.
Hmm.
Just to give one example, obviously, of one possibility.
Sure. But what was your most recent past life?
The one that I know more recently was probably maybe about 200, 250 years ago. And it must have been, I think, that on England or north of Europe somehow. It seemed to me like I had like this big sort of like farm, and it seemed to be like a little bit well off, much better off than I am right now. Let's put it this way, because the piece of land was very big. And the main aspect of that life, the reason why I think I connected to it, and the main lesson of that was more than anything a specific relationship that I had with my wife at that moment, who is a person that I know from this life, or I haven't, spoken to them in years. But it was more about a specific whatchamacallit, sort of like a karmic knot, if I can use this expression, of something that we needed to work together. And that was the crux of why I remember that, or that helped me to remember that past life. So yes, I remember some of the physical details for sure, but the main thing had to do with a personal relationship.
Sure. Do you remember the in between lives, right? Like in selecting your purpose here or your mission here or what you wanted to try to achieve here?
Yeah, I remember I have some memories, especially of preparing for this life and preparing for certain things in this life. And I also I have memories of preparing for this life, for certain aspects of this life, and preparing as well with certain other people who are at this moment here close to me. It is interesting how many times, and probably this is true for most people, the biggest link to some of these recollections are again individuals, people. This is, the ones that end up making the biggest effect on us, right? So it's not, the iPhone, the Apple Vision Pro, but it's actually the person that you're talking to, and the laughter that you got when you were interacting with them, right? So yeah, I do remember those individuals, and I do remember that preparation. I remember that we were thinking, this is going to be hard, but at the same time, like if anybody probably that knows me knows that when things get a little bit difficult, I start to try to make jokes to try to soften the, how could I say, the problem, and for us to be able to go through it in a little bit more of a constructive and with better energies type of a thing. So I remember making those jokes, and having that type of interaction with those individuals at that moment in between lives.
Hmm. Can you affect future timelines from the out of body?
Um, what I have seen, it doesn't seem like it. It seems like you can get an inkling and a perception of a potential future, and then you can obviously come back and modify it in that fashion, right? So at this moment, you end up taking a different decision, and now it's another potential future, the one that you're going to go through, but not modify directly the future, at least not that I have seen. you
Hmm.
know
Have you
um,
seen your future timeline?
no,
Hmm.
I have seen potential future events, that seem like they were going to happen. And by this, again, I don't mean, world events, World War III, no, again, they are personal things. They are, yeah, very specific personal things, like people that I'm going to meet, for example, in 10, 20 10, 20 lives, 10, 20 years. Even, my current wife, I remember I had this OBE when I was, 20, and I had already seen her. But at that moment, I knew that was going to be an important person in my life. But when I met her here in the physical, many years later, now a little bit more currently, we started the interaction, we started dating, we started going out. And maybe about 4 or 5 months later is that I realized, wait a second, I think I had had an OBE with this person. And I had to go back and take a look at my notes and see the description. That's right. That's right. It is her.
Hmm.
So that type of premonitions type of a thing, more in a personal fashion.
Sure. So you take notes with every out of body, so like you can, I guess, remember it.
I would say in most of them. And I also would say, I would have to agree that I was much more disciplined taking notes when I was younger. Nowadays, many of them I should, but sometimes it's just an issue of time. It's really what ends up boiling down to.
Sure. And speaking of time, I know we're at the end of our hour together, which went by really quick, but consciousness, I don't think resides in the brain. And I wanted to ask you this, right? Like, so where does memory come from? Like when people have difficulties here,
Yeah.
specifically with dementia or some type of other disease in the brain, like why do they lose their memory? Like when they pass on, do they immediately regain it?
Yeah, yeah, I certainly would agree with that, and probably most people who have out-of-body experiences would agree with that. That consciousness doesn't reside on the brain, and the memory, the main memory of all of us also doesn't reside on the brain. So the brain seems to have its own, storage device, and sometimes I say that the physical body is like a laptop. So we have, a hard disk in here, and we can carry this hard disk everywhere, and we can carry the laptop everywhere. It already gives us a lot of service. Great. I'm not going to put it down. But our biggest memory is in the cloud, so to speak, or it's in with our consciousness. And this is the memory that allows us to have a recollection of a past life, that allows us, to have recollections of in between life periods, and also of this life. You know, so what happens more than likely with people that are having dementia is that the hardware got a little damaged, either because of, old age or, different diseases, etc. In the cases of other individuals, right? So even though the main memory is intact, the hardware is not able to, process it, so to speak. And yes, when people pass away, even if they were a little bit senile, for example, not necessarily because of a disease, but just simply old age, they can regain all of their memories and all of their functioning, outside. My maternal grandfather, when before he passed away, he was already advanced in age, 97 or 98, I think he passed away. He wouldn't recognize me anymore. I remember some of the last times that we went to visit him. He would ask my mother, like, who is this man? Because I was already like 18, so I was no longer a kid, right? Which were probably the memories that he had of me, as a kid. So who is this man? Why are you letting this man into the door? And sometimes it was even a little bit aggressive, but it was just simply senility. Him is a person that I have met afterwards outside the body, and he obviously he remembers me fine. But beyond that, one of the interesting things that this might be interesting to the listeners is that it threw me off the first time I bumped into him because he looked like a 35, 40-year-old, much taller than me, erect. And the reason why that was different is because the memories that I have of him, he was already in his 90s. So this was this older man, sort of like hunched over and many times with a cane. And these were the only memories that I had of him. For me, this was him. So when I saw him outside the body as this, energetic, robust person of 35, 40, taller than me and everything, it threw me off a little bit, the appearance. I already knew that when we pass away and we regain awareness and consciousness, we have the tendency to portray, the appearance of what we think are our best years. So, afterwards it clicked on me, but at the beginning it just simply threw me off. Like, who is this person? Grandpa? And, he basically looked my age or a little bit younger than what I was at that time. So, but yes, he remembered everything. So yeah, we can recover that memory, once we pass away and we regain our awareness.
Louis, man, that was a beautiful answer. That was a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. Where can people connect with you? Where can they find your work? Can they follow you on any social media? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I give classes with Mosaic Wellness and Education. These are our, this is, our group of friends. Let's say that we have been giving classes for decades already on several paranormal phenomena, energies, and everything. So we are on Facebook, mosaicwe.com, and our website is also mosaicwe.com, and people can contact us there. We have, courses going on all the time, some of them that are recorded that people can attend at their own leisurely from home. We even have, by the way, something that might be interesting from time to time, but at this moment we have this ongoing, is what we call a remote viewing or an OBE challenge. So in a different city of the world, we put an object and we record a video and a picture, and then people from all over the world can train their abilities in that fashion, right? They have to leave their body at night, go and see the object, come back. And if they are pretty sure of what they saw, they can send us an email so that it's registered even before, we send the email showing them what was the actual object. And then every week we switch the object. So people have a few opportunities, to try to attempt to train their own perception.
I love it. Out of body remote viewing challenge. I love that.
Yeah.
Can I
It,
ask you one last question?
yeah, absolutely.
So when people say go within to find the truth, right? Everything that you need to know is within you. What does that mean?
Yeah, the way I would understand it is I think that they're trying to, tune in to this repository of experiences that people have from all of their lives, because, which is similar to a certain extent to having out of body experiences. If we were able to remember, there are advantages and disadvantages of this, but if we are able to remember many of the experiences that we had from other lives, we would realize, for example, I already made this mistake. I don't need to make it again. I already tried with this person. So, as wonderful as he or she is, let me now go in a different direction. And then we just simply more of our wisdom would shine through simply because we have had, already quite a bit of experience. That that would be my interpretation when people are saying, go within, your higher self, your repository of experience.
Don't get mad at me. I'm going to follow up with that. So when you have, when you believe in this idea of reincarnation, or when you know about this concept of reincarnation, does that eliminate fear? And if so, does that give you more confidence to go after your dreams in this lifetime?
Yes, a good question. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I think that a lot of people are stopped by fear, and rightly so, because of course it is, not just the fear of death, but also the fear of the unknown, right? Of what does this all mean, or what is going to happen, in which situation am I going to be afterwards, right? And then the fact that you already have an understanding, a better understanding of what's going to happen, of the fact that you can exist without the physical body, that you can manifest and be yourself and have your own personality, even though your physical body and your physical brain is, in bed sleeping, gives you a lot more confidence to just, you're right, to just go for it. To just, and not just go for it in the sense of, okay, I'm going to go for it and invest in this project and make a lot of money. Nothing wrong necessarily with that, but also with your vulnerabilities. Look, I'm going to help this person. I know I'm going to look like a fool, Nobody's going to realize. Maybe some people are going to laugh. That's okay. This is the right thing to do. It doesn't matter. I know who I am, or I know a little bit better who I am. So yeah, in that sense as well.
Lewis, man, I got to end it on that. That was an awesome drop mic moment. This has been a fantastic conversation. I know it's early for you. I can't thank you enough for joining the show. I can't thank you enough for the work that you've done. You're such a gentle soul. You're such a positive energy in this world. Thank you for everything that you do, man.
Thank you so much, Trey. And by the way, likewise, we need more of this type, more dissemination of this information so that people know, that they have other resources than just simply the physical means. So I appreciate you and thank you so much for doing what you're doing. Best of success.